as the center of our culture, we see more similarities than we do differences, and the differences are not irreconcilable. Yeah. So the idea is that cultural synthesis is an aspect of our liberation that speaks to the cultural oneness in our varieties, in our varying expressions, right? And so we never just said we are a Ifa or a Isheshe organization. We only deal with voodoo, right? You know what I'm saying? You know, and at the time as well, there were some who were delving into Kemetu spirituality, but delving into Kemetu spirituality in a very elitist kind of way, as though Kemetu spirituality is somehow superior to Vudan, and Isheshe and Fadzimu tradition, the Shola tradition, or the you know what I'm saying? Like to say Amen Ra is superior to say Nokul Buwane. You know what I mean? Like it's so dead that, it's a cultural synthesis, right? So we learn from our Kemetu Nile Valley ancestors as much as we learn from our Ifa, Yoruba, Isheshe ancestors, and also the fact that in the Americas, our traditions are quite literally a cultural synthesis, right? So if I say Kumina, I'm not just referring to a Kikongo tradition. You're gonna find a Chanti tradition in there. You're gonna find Igbo tradition in that. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
As it relates to Jamaica, right? So if I say Shango tradition in Trinidad, you're gonna find you're gonna find a cultural synthesis of African spiritual traditions. And so quite literally, it's like our ancient past and our recent, present, and future intention is to understand the oneness in these traditions, and the best way to understand it, or the oneness in it among ourselves, and the best way to understand that is to unify our culture. So that's where cultural synthesis comes in.
Absolutely. So you're gonna have to remind me again what exactly was controversial about that.
No. Okay.
Go on.
No. I know that there are some people that are very particular that you must pick one. You must go into one thing, and you know what I'm saying, and you have to just know that. And there's beauty in that, because I'm doing that more and more. As I grow and I develop, I understand the need to delve into and study and become initiated in what's it called, our spiritual systems as whole systems. And understand them as whole systems, right? But if we look at our ancient ancestors, this is not a sensibility that I can find among them. That one was Ifa alone and didn't study, the traditions that were around them. You know what I'm saying? And the more we study, we're finding that our spiritual initiation was one of the major ways in which a Pan-African sensibility developed among Africans on the continent. So one will get into their own and then go across the water and be initiated into the other knowledge system. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? And that was not an irregular condition. So
occurrence.
Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely. No, Brother ShakaRa, you again. Wow, okay. If that's what you consider controversial, then I'm waiting for the controversial. Because everything you said is spot on, not necessarily because perhaps this is also our viewpoint and the way we've approached all of our research, but even the evidence is there. So, one of the things you mentioned being Shango, and especially Ogun, right? We now know them largely as Ifa or Orishes only, but you can find both of these archetypes of understanding across the whole of West Africa. Shango is even in one of the big energies among the Ga people along the coast of Accra. So, they'll just say Shango, the pronunciation is slightly altered. So, for me, where we find those who perhaps want to develop a certain kind of elitist, if you want to call it, approach, it's just that continuation of that colonial mentality, if you ask me. But then you also further contextualized it and made a great point of also understanding systems in its wholeness. So I would say that both are equally valid. While you're building the whole, Don't discard the rest. Is what I will add to that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Not controversial at all. I would actually call it wise and considerate. Yeah, because you can see the bigger picture rather than your little tree in front of you. Yeah, beautiful, brother ShakaRa. Now you're bringing a different kind of energy to this live. You know, can you see there's some people having a conversation in tree all of a sudden? You know that's not happening yet.
You know what? I'm learning. Meteti kra. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting there. So yeah, soon. We'll speak Thursday.
No problem, man. Let's go back. Guitar. Philosophy says, well, what to say? I believe he's speaking to a Fuachirewa. What to say means, how are you? Also says, me who yeah. Now won't swear. I'm fine, and how are you? And then where's he gone? Oh, guitar philosophy is not come back. And interestingly enough, he says his name is Kweku Adofo. Yeah, guitar philosophy. You want to come and tell us what the Adofo means? I think you may find somebody else on the call with the name Adofo. We have to find out who this person is. Yes, lovely.
Yes,
lovely. Let's. I need to show this comment right now from the Transatlantic African Diaspora. As the descendants, I'm going to do a little paraphrasing there. As the descendants of enslaved Africans, we have so many ancestors within us. We are walking Africa. We could possibly have the whole of Africa within us. Absolutely. Every cell in your body and its expression is African. You know, the degree to which we see or not also depends on the depth to which the colonial educational experience informs us and our outlook. Yes. So let me just look through a couple of the comments. Keep everybody in tune. AF guitar philosophy say AF. Thank you. Yeah, that was why AF meaning it's nice. You know, it's good. AF ShakaRa na and yamia. Why? Okay, ShakaRa, I'll have to decode that another time.
Indeed.
Let's go to Nazaha Anan. Agree, we now have the same. As you are speaking on learning on all our spiritual systems, it all comes from the Nile Valley. We traveled all over our continent of Africa. All is incorporated. This is how we grow towards each other. Absolutely.
Can I slightly correct that, Brother Dali?
Yeah, I know. I'll put that you're going there. Don't worry. Please,
all I'm going to say is it came to the Nile Valley before it came from the Nile Valley. That's what I want to say, right? Because I want to make it clear that the Nile Valley drew traditions from all over, Mama Africa, right? To itself, right? You know what I'm saying? And this exactly, you're right. In their own words, they say this, so we have to bear that in mind. So we don't want to, and it's important to note that as well, because there are many people now that are trying to exclude some Africans from the Nile Valley experience, as though nobody below Sudan and west of Ethiopia entered the Nile Valley. You know, you know what I'm saying?
You know, as you said that actually is let me just throw that in there, boy, because to me, I don't know nothing controversy. Your controversy is, in my sense of the word, your escapism from the truth. Maybe that's why they call that part of Africa sub. What they call it again? Because I don't use that word. Sub-Saharan. You know, when you think of the bizarre stupidity of such a statement, a landmass occupies the same altitude from the sea level. You cannot have something that is sub to the other. But then obviously we know where we see this word sub, because this is where the European applied it to Africans. So in my opinion anyway, each time you keep saying sub-Saharan Africa, in a sense you're saying, oh yeah, I'm the one underneath the other, which is again the Nile Valley. And for those who are very enamored by the Nile Valley or Kemet, I would really suggest that try and take a trip to Southern Africa, to any part of the Kalahari Desert. Because it's good for you to see with your own eyes. If we're talking about where everything comes from, the evidence is there for you to decipher for yourself. Beyond that. So thank you very much. That's a beautiful thing. Nazaha Anan. Thank you. I love that. Each one teach one. Brother ShakaRa, give thanks for your learning as well. Then, Brother ShakaRa, I'm gonna another question out there, because we're each learning.
Yes, sir.
Go along. You know, can you elaborate then on why some African spell or the Africa with the K? Are there any spiritual suggestions or positions behind that? If any?
There is, but okay. So this is another one interesting. Okay? I know there are some people that that they get really incensed by the use of the K for some reason. It's funny. For me personally, I'll be honest with you. The subject of the show is being raised in an African spiritual home, right? So for me, it's actually more natural to spell it with a K because in my home, that's how we spell it. And the reason is because of this tradition that developed. I think it really dates back to the 1970s among Black nationalists, who were studying African languages and noticing that more often than not, the K sound was symbolized with a K rather than a C. Yeah.
Yes.
So for example, this was mainly among a lot of Africans in America, the United States of America. A lot of them were studying Swahili, and in Swahili, there is the C is not a letter that you find by itself. It's always accompanied normally by a H, right? So the K sound is symbolized by the K. In the Tree alphabet, as you know, it's A, B, D, E, F, F, G. There's no C, there's no K there. Here, E, K. So the K is the K, right?
Yeah.
So in that respect, so in studying, it became known that the C spelling really came into popular usage with the colonization of the continent, and with the anglicization, of our people. And so in that respect, using the K was seen as aligning itself with what the people that were using the K understood to be how African languages use the spelling. So if we're gonna, the first thing we should correct in that sense, we're calling ourselves African. Let's use the commonalities as it associated with people that are using the languages that we say we want to learn. And then an added significance came about in the sense of the fact that we understand that Africa with the C has taken on a geopolitical meaning within the world that we know it, right? So the Africa with the K was us basically say, well, when we say African, we're talking about Africans around the world, at home and abroad, on the continent and in the diaspora, and that kind of thing. And so, but ultimately, it became it's like, because I'm kind of hitting. I've been in a place where I've been neither here nor there with it sometimes, right? But because I feel like we probably there's a significant argument about us moving beyond the term Africa in general anyway, whilst keeping the concept of what it means, right? So that we're not getting rid of the concept of what it means, but understanding that the term itself comes into popular usage with the Romans, right? You know what I'm saying? Even though the origin is not necessarily the Romans, but that's how it becomes into popular usage, right? So and I sympathize with that argument. Ultimately, we're at a point whereby we're seeking to redefine ourselves, and we're starting from where we're at, right? So we know what African means. We give meaning to African, and then once we've given that meaning, and we've all substantively invested in that, we will naturally evolve where we need to evolve to from there. But for now, I'm quite okay being an African, right? You know what I'm saying?
That's beautiful in that sense. You see, again, whenever I'm on these calls, anyway, you see, for me, I get a repeating theme. To me, that is an entity. It's almost spiritual. It's come back. We've come back to it, and I'm repeating for those who were at the beginning. There is power in reclaiming and redefining. Just as people have given labels to things. By doing so, you create an entity. You create a thing. You give it life. Whether it's even just in a mental space or not. And that's the power in the definition. I tell you what, be it back when I was kind of coming up and I was having some of these discussions, an elder told me one thing that I love, and for me, it doesn't have to be justified or nothing. It just says, I loved what he said. He said to me that the KA was in reference to the Kemetic aspect of the spirit or soul, the Ka. And that Ka was to symbolize the African within self. I don't need no.
No, yeah, and that did develop.
No, yeah. I nearly said a word I shouldn't say online. Right. We don't need no academic from Oxford or Cambridge to decide whether that's true or not. But I totally it resonates.
Yeah,
it makes
exactly.
sense.
And I was gonna say so when you asked me, did it have a spiritual meaning? It developed that. So I don't know if that was the intention initially, but obviously as people begin to study, Kemetu spirituality, and the car, the significance of the car, and then in a book, is it Blacks in Science? Ivan Van Sertima puts forward this idea that the etymological root of the word of the word Africa is Afrika. Now I don't know if this is scholastically, like etymologically proven to be the etymology, but it took on significance in the movement because Afrika is said to mean to turn towards the opening of the car or something like that. So then, then out of that, now you get people spelling it Afrika. Yeah. I've seen all of that. All that kind of stuff. So it took on different meanings as things grew. But that was definitely one of them. And so I know a lot of people that they spell it with a capital K. Whenever they spell Africa, they spell it with a capital K to symbolize that. And that's all well and good. It's a part of the journey, man.
Absolutely, brother. And we shouldn't take these things for granted because this is what I love about the fact that you said as we go, it's all taken as there. And when the day is coming, we will get there. It's very funny you say that, especially the capital, because I remember, my area of study here it was a field called information design. And when I was in the first year of uni, they gave us a test. And from this test, it taught me a lot. I just thought it was just a random test. It actually looked like an English spelling test at uni. I was like, I'm not here to learn English. And they're like, oh, you write some of these words and you use it to fill the spaces, right? And when this test finished, straight away, I noticed how the teachers, after they marked it, the way they treated everybody was different. Now, one of the things I noticed was and for me, it related directly to me because the word was United Nations. And it had been spelt in capitals, but I wrote it in lowercase because for me, it didn't matter the noun or the grammar. So again, that affirmation in itself is an affirmation of power, and we should never discard it as having no value. Now, again, this is why this is important. I will read my beloved sister Taiwo's message. She says, "Listens, I love this brother. I love that this brother has been imbued with knowledge from long time. I remember the brother as a young boy. How time flies." Sister Taiwo, you're not the only one. I remember when he barely had dreads and he was sitting at the BFI listening to Brother Toyin after he went and shook up the Queen for trying to commemorate the same people that he murdered. Go on.
I'll tell you this. Auntie Taiwo literally knows me since I was a baby. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, give facts, Auntie. She's not lying. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again,
Go.
Yeah, I was just saying she's again reinforcing why we even chose the title because I guess the evidence speaks for itself.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Brother ShakaRa, can I just take this question here for you from Tristan Samuels? He says, "What is the importance of understanding of cultural systems in the diaspora?" Excuse me. Example, Kumina and Obia and Vodou as equally African as their continental kin.
It's a beautiful question. First of all, greetings to Brother Tristan. For those who may not be aware, Brother Tristan is a scholar of Medjugorje, our ancient Kemetu language, and he's doing some brilliant work. So if you don't know, get to know. And he's actually teaching classes, beginners classes in the Medjugorje also. I will be his student one day. So we look forward to that. But do check out the brother if you have not done so already. And thank you for joining us, bro. I appreciate it. So I touched on this earlier. And the more I grow, the more I'm seeing the value in this. As Africans from the diaspora, we need to recognize and pay homage to the fact that our ancestors did not throw away their traditions, throughout the enslavement experience. That we have one of the success stories of our experience is the extent to which we preserved, held onto, and evolved our spiritual traditions, yeah. And so Kumina is one of them. As he says, Obia, I would say is one of them, but in a sense, Obia is all of them, because the term Obia becomes popularized really by the enslaver. Not to say that the term Obia is legitimate within the systems, right? But how it becomes popularized is because of the enslaver. After 1760, when Chief Taki had a rebellion, yeah, in Jamaica, yeah, they instituted various anti-Obia laws, but they were calling everything that was African Obia. So whether the African called it Obia or not, they called everything Obia. So we call everything Obia, right? If you ask, yeah, you know, exactly. So if you ask most Jamaicans what is Obia, them can't tell you. Them can't tell you what name Obia, right? You know what I'm saying, right? But yeah, so it's very important, partly because these traditions were at the center of our resistance. Yeah, there is no resistance in the Americas that did not have African spirituality at its center. None. Yeah, from the rituals to those who were organizing. If we look at the Taki's rebellion, the rebellion was organized by so-called Obia men. These were the central organizers of the rebellion. We know about Haiti. We know less about Palmares, yeah, in Brazil, yeah, whereby there was technically, which is really the first independent African state in the Americas, right? Technically speaking, yeah, from the 1500s to 1600s, right, for 100 years, yeah, in the middle of Brazil, a territory almost as big as Portugal was governed over by some Africans, yeah, using their indigenous spiritual systems, right, indigenous culture and then kind of things there. So I think that we do homage to our ancestors, that when we're starting our spiritual journeys, that we begin with our African spiritual retentions, yeah, and link it to our brothers and sisters on the continent and elsewhere in the diaspora. So don't just link to Nigeria and Congo, but also link to Suriname and Belize and Panama and Brazil. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, and the more I study Kumina, for example, as an African from Jamaica, the more I really get to understand how much we preserve and how we preserve. It's beautiful. You know, like the people that are basically speaking the Kikongo language right now. You know, they're basically speaking the true language right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I have a question for you, Daniel.
Okay.
Because I know you studied this to some degree, but it's a speculation that I've had that in terms of this reunification that we need to do, that there may be, because some people say, well, because I heard that about, I hear things about let's say Babalawos going to like Brazil to teach people, but but somebody that they taught them how to do the rituals properly, and that made me a little bit uncomfortable, right? I'm not sure if that's the consciousness that they went there with, but if they did, but I'm saying, is it not possible that whereas, because we've both been through, like on the continent and in the diaspora, we've been through colonization and enslavement, and we know that equally, like, our traditions were affected, our culture was affected by these experiences, and so our spiritual systems were not immune to that effect. So is it possible then that there are certain aspects of the traditions that we preserve better in the diaspora, as much as there are certain aspects of the tradition that were preserved better on the continent, if that makes sense? I don't know if I'm, and that might be another controversial question.
Yeah, no, not to worry. I'm going to repeat it to make sure that I understand. So you're questioning whether it's a good idea for, should we say, Babalaos to be given knowledge, or rather too much of it, let's say in certain spaces. Go on.
No, that's not quite my question. I'm really looking at whether there are certain aspects of African spiritual traditions, that were better preserved, in the diaspora. As well as there were certain aspects of it that were better preserved on the continent, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So as much as we have things to learn from our brothers and sisters on the continent, we may also have some things to teach, if that makes sense, from a diaspora perspective, and vice versa.
Yeah. Fully. You know, Brazil is one of the most I guess, what's the word? Yeah, it's just the place where you see most of that in action. Because you see, like, say, where you will see in the diaspora, I'll say most in action in my experience, because I'm also going to talk about other areas we haven't even started thinking about or know about. Yeah. So like, for instance, in this place, Bahia in Brazil, when you go into a shop owned by an African, well, most of the shops, even those owned by those whose lineage come from Europe, you find things like the shop is named after an Orisha. So you might have a bar that is, it will be called Shango. Yeah.
Yes.
But then you will enter there and you will find like a little space, like an altar within that space of business, where there's veneration to that energy. In the same way, you go into one of these Chinese, Korean nail shops, and then they have their little shrine in the corner. And where Brazil even gives us even more is there's still aspects of the Yoruba that they speak that no longer exist in Nigeria itself. So absolutely, there's always ways in which we can learn. And I also know that certain houses on the continent basically fed most of these European anthropologists with a bag of plausible stories that were not necessarily always funny. You know, because everybody assumed the Africans were stupid. These people, they're just giving the information away. One of those being especially that book, The Pale Fox. And this French anthropologist lived there for a good 13 odd years. But then you find that you can find certain scholars now from within, should we say, the Malian tradition themselves telling you otherwise. So it's not, it's not just giving information away fully like that. The other thing I want to talk about, which I think is very important, you see, because again, we speak English that we don't know, particularly in the South Americas. It's not just Brazil. Like recently, I came across this community, I believe it was in Bolivia, an African community. It looked same like me, like they've never left the continent. And they had kept, they're basically maroon societies that are across the South Americas. But then, you know, again, how do we make these connections? It's important that we do make these connections, you know? So the work that we have to do, it's not no small work, but we're going to do, at least we're going to put some effort in there. So I have to give a big thanks to the sister, and bear with me, let me go into, you know, there are so many windows, man. I like to give a big shout out. Please let me stop, ShakaRa, because I have to go to PayPal. Sister Jeanette Higgs, I want to thank you very much for your donation to the works. You know, again, part of this work we need to do has to be resourced, you know. Thank you so very much. I love the numbers as well, you know. 1333. I love that. Thank you very much. Yes. Beautiful vibration on that number there. Sister, we appreciate you, Sister Laurie. So appreciative of this conversation touching on Jamaica. Absolutely, you know. I wish we could touch on some more, but I know how the winds of change blow. So we'll be talking enough. And next, we might need a translator here, because we'll be speaking to somebody that even I can't speak to. Yeah, let's speak that into existence and make it happen. We've come with a beautiful question from Sankofa Rising. Does ShakaRa feel he has struggled to relate to the society he exists in because of how he was raised? School, work, etc. Brother ShakaRa?
That's an interesting question. Yes and no. Yeah, yes and no. I'm born and raised East London, but African spiritualist. Now that's a unique experience. I don't know anybody else outside of my home. Yeah, really, that was raised in a very African spiritual way. So in that respect, yeah, it's difficult to align with the society. You're never of the world. Yeah, you're never of the world that you're living in, right? You're constant. It's constantly attacking you, and you're in constant resistance to it. In that respect, but there's a self-assurance that comes from that as well. Yeah, like I didn't grow up feeling marginalized and subjugated in that respect. I you know, this being raised as an African spiritualist, it emboldened me in that respect. Yeah, you know, before Afrobeat was an African designer wear was fashion, when it was no uniform day, I'm wearing buba and shokoto to go to school, right? That's just what it is, right? Just what I'm saying. That's just what it is, yeah. Because that's just who man is, right? You know what I'm saying? And there was no hiding anyway because my name is Tafadzwa. You know what I'm saying? So so you either bow your head in shame or you raise it high and walk in confidence. That's just what it is.
Okay.
You know, but having said that though, I do, like, in adulthood, I realize how philosophically speaking, being raised in this way and being raised not just African spiritualists, but African spiritualists within the context of a political consciousness as well. Very important, right? It gives you tools for analyzing reality and the world that you realize how different it is to how most people think. If that makes sense, right? So I think in very communal ways, kind of naturally. Because we were raised saying umuntu ungumuntu ungabantu. A person is a person because there are people. You know what I'm saying? And we understood that as the African sense of self as juxtaposed to I think therefore I am. The understanding of the creator being the ultimate reality, as they said in our Kebalan, Mwari is the totality of the universe manifesting all that is. And being raised with that consciousness is a very different thing to thinking of God as a man in the sky. You know what I'm saying? And so there are certain, so the older I get, the more I'm realizing there are certain things that come with that consciousness. And how when I'm interacting with people, I get that it's sometimes I'm finding it difficult to translate what it is I'm trying to communicate because they don't necessarily have a frame of reference.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm learning to try and communicate more effectively in that regard. But yeah, it was different, but beautiful at the same time as well. You know?